Hello, my name is Samuel George London, and welcome to Comics for the Apocalypse. On today's episode, I speak to comic book artist, writer, and super nice guy Dan Butcher about what comics he would take into the apocalypse. But before we get into it, if you do enjoy the show, please leave a review for us on iTunes or whichever podcast service you use, as not only will it let me know that you liked it, but I believe it helps make other people aware of the show as well. Now, without further ado, on with the show. Hello, Dan.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well, mate. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, not too bad. Pretty good.
Fantastic. Good Christmas and New Year?
Yeah, it's not too bad. You know, kind of relatively quiet. We was talking briefly before we came on about New Year's, and I'm kind of so done with that. I'm like in bed by 11.
Straight up, mate. Straight up. I just about made it past midnight.
Yeah, not one of these people that stands in a pub and then got to go around and give people hugs at midnight that you don't know just because you're absolutely slaughtered. But yeah, no, that's not for me.
So over that. So over that. Like once you get kids, it's just like, nah.
Yeah, can't be bothered with this.
Or even of a certain age, yeah. It's awesome.
I do remember my parents like going when I was my son's age, going to like family or friends New Year's, and me and the other kids would be stuck in the living room or wherever watching TV while they sort of had a good old time. But I don't know, maybe it's changed. It's a generational thing.
Yeah, because I remember that as well, and we don't do that much.
No. Not really a done thing.
Or at least I don't get the invites. So I don't know.
Me and you in the same boat, mate.
Well, there we go.
And I'm not complaining.
No, exactly. I'm happy at home,
Yeah.
just watching Netflix or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or reading comics.
Yeah.
Which is what today's all about. So firstly, thanks so much for coming to Comics for the Apocalypse. It's a pleasure to have you on board.
Yeah, pleasure.
And kind of for the listeners, firstly, what are you doing in the space of comics, and where can people find out more about you?
People might know me already from another podcast, is the Awesome Comic Podcast, which I'm one of the hosts on with Vince Hunt and Tony Esmond.
Which is my weekly, my Monday morning.
Oh, thank you.
Basically.
And this week we've just been putting the finishing touches to our the fourth issue of our anthology, which is like wraps everything up, and that should be published for True Believers, which is on the 2nd of Feb. So that's been a lot of hard work, but it's been good to kind of get that done and dusted. And also I do my own comic called Vanguard, which started out as a webcomic, and now it's 2 books have been printed. I've got to try and get around to get the 3rd one done. And I'm just gearing up to start doing the 16th issue of that. Epic. So I was complaining that I put kind of all the story beats into a Word doc, and it came up to like 33 odd pages. And I was like, oh Christ. Oh, wow. And that's not even with like filling it out or putting any of the action bits in, which will add a little bit more. So I'd have to go at it with a razor and trim it down. Essentially, that's what storytelling is like, it's relatively easy to come up with the ideas, but you got to hack away all the what you don't need and get to the very core of it.
That's it. Get rid of the chaff, and hopefully you'll end up with a decent amount of wheat. But
sometimes you have to cut away the wheat as well, which is
on top of. You're quite right, actually. And I mean, Vanguard is such an undertaking. Because how long have you been doing it now? I
think about maybe 10 years or so. Yeah.
Gosh,
it's a very old time.
It really is, mate. And you consistently post every week.
Yes, I get 2 updates a week. Essentially, I try and make 2 issues a year. Sometimes I go over the stupid page count. There's a couple of issues that sail over 30 and a couple that sail over 40 pages. Yeah. But when you're doing webcomics, you can kind of do that because you don't have to stick to a 21 page or a 24 page like monthly comic. You can do what you want. If I want a splash page, I can do that. I'm my own boss. But I kind of started because I wanted if you I was going to sit down with a piece of paper and pencil, I'd be like, right, what am I going to do? And I'd just probably doodle a little bit, but no real objective. Whereas bi-weekly webcomic was a way of kind of driving the talent and focus to do something each week, as opposed to sit around just pretty aimless or without a target. I mean, I worked with other people in webcomics to kind of get my head around it. And as soon as I understood what I wanted to do and how to do it, I was off on my own.
Straight up. And what a job you've done, mate. I mean,
thank you.
It's absolutely fantastic. I check it out every week. I highly recommend everybody listening to go check it out. It's vanguardcomic.com, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's all up there, all for free. Exactly. It's interesting looking at the early pages and then looking at the more recent ones. So you can imagine over years the style changes and improves. Yeah. But I always say to them, don't go back to your old stuff and try and rework it, because that's like a snake eating his tail. It
really is, mate. Don't George Lucas it.
Just don't
forget about it. Move on.
Yeah.
and I think it's what's the fashion designer in The Incredibles?
Edna Mode.
Edna Mode, and she says, "I never look back, darling. Just never look back. Just keep moving forward."
Sage advice.
In it. Fantastic. And then people on Twitter, you're at Vanguard Comic as well.
Yeah, that's right. On Twitter, it's at Vanguard Comic, and I usually just post up a load of stuff on there. I try and put
and your GIFs are amazing. They are the best.
I've tried to, when I do like the update stuff, so when you get a new page coming out, try and get people's kind of attention, because I think I was reading something about Twitter, like text tweets get a certain amount of interest, but images with tweets get more. So animated tweets, like it's got to be kind of optimal. So I think if you're kind of doing that thing, trying to attach a good image with it to get people into what you're doing, is you got to do it really. It's just like everyone's shouting all the time, and your voice has got to be a little bit more loud and interesting.
Exactly, and GIFs are the way forward, definitely.
Yeah, GIFs are the way forward.
A sterling job, so everybody check it out at Vanguard Comic.
Yeah, go read. It's great when you get feedback off of readers. So if you enjoy it, feel free to leave it.
Exactly. Post it up. Right. Well, without further ado, let's get into comics for the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So starting off with the first question that everybody's asked, what type of apocalypse would you like to be in, or what type of apocalypse do you think you'd survive in?
I think everyone thinks that they'll do fairly well in an apocalypse.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, I reckon I could do all right. Like what's the problem? Especially zombies. Everyone thinks, I could probably kick some ass.
Yeah.
But actually, that'd be quite difficult. It'd be really difficult. I put the apocalypse I would think I would survive in was the Stephen King's The Stand apocalypse, where the super flu kind of wipes out the majority of the population. You're kind of either called to the good guys or the bad guys. Hopefully, I'd go to the good guys.
I think so. I'd hope so.
I'd hope so. It can be in doubt sometimes, but no, hopefully I go there, because there's no problems with food or water. It's like it's all there. There's no kind of crazy maniacs riding around in souped up V8s or undead sort of assassins crawling around trying to take a chunk out of you. So that's what I would go for. I think that's what. And same with nuclear apocalypse. Everyone, that's kind of like glorified, but the idea of staying in a bunker for 24 years before
you're going to go stir crazy and vitamin D deficient as well. Right?
It wouldn't work out well. No. So
not at all. So we're in The Stand by Stephen King.
Yeah.
And at the end of the podcast, we'll find out what your weapon, useful item, or tool of choice will be.
Yes.
We'll leave that for now until the end.
Yes.
Now that we're in The Stand by Stephen King, you're in a group of people, and you're sitting around the campfire. There's maybe a couple of people in the corner that have got the virus, but you guys are all doing well. And the subject of comics comes up. And the first question that's asked is, what's the first comic you remember enjoying?
Interesting. Yeah. I would like many people in the UK, it's probably going to be the Beano or the Dandy. I do remember like reading that. I couldn't tell you one story that I read from it, but I do remember reading it often. And kind of after that, I graduated, as I imagine many do. Like all the comics I had available to me was essentially down the newsagent, and you'd go down there maybe a couple times a week, or after school or on the weekend to see what comics there were. And oh crap! Hold on, my dog wants to go out.
Oh, no worries, mate. Don't worry. It's all good. It's all part and parcel of real life.
Oh.
What's your dog's name, Dan?
Sorry about that. Bloody. I'll start. I'll take that from the top.
No, that's all good, mate. What's your dog's name?
Ray. I'm usually
Ray.
when I record, I'm upstairs, but my wife's working tonight, so I'm downstairs with him, and he's just decided he wanted to go out, so he started whacking at the door.
Bless him.
So first comic is probably going to have to be, like many people in the UK, is the Beano. It's either the Beano or the Dandy, but I can't recall ever a particular story, but I do remember reading it. And I think my brother kind of got into it a bit more than I did. He was a member of the Dennis the Menace fan club. I'm pretty sure that was a thing. But it was always kind of like down the newsagent, that was your selection of comics, and I used to go after like the Action Force. It was G.I. Joe reprints in the UK and Transformers.
Classic.
Yeah, and then
you couldn't escape it,
No,
down the newsagents.
Yeah, that's kind of. It was like A4 size, wasn't it? Quite big format. And then I think I kind of graduated onto the American stuff with like the Marvel stuff. I do remember Gru by Sergio Aragón, which was. I've got issues of that to this day. It's
really?
Great. Yeah, that's such a great comic.
Awesome. What's that about?
It's kind of like a Conan the Barbarian spoof, where you've got this wandering swordsman called Gru and his dog Rufto, who he's really dumb, but he's the best swordsman, and he gets into the scrapes, and all the people around him. Essentially, a lot of the stories are always focusing on the people around him when their machinations trying to get stuff done, and Gru's kind of like a cog, a spanner in the works that kind of screws it all up. And their kind of stories have big morals to them, and it's interesting. It's like running jokes, and it's hard to describe. I'd recommend picking a couple of issues up because they're great.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's really good. It's a really interesting character that he's so stupid. A lot of time when people are sort of taking the mick out of him, he doesn't really understand. But then if he gets angry and pulls out the swords, he can like turn over entire armies and cities. And
wow,
everyone's
you
really
don't
scared
mess with him.
No, because he's kind of like, you just don't get on his wrong side. But yeah.
He's an absolute klutz.
Yeah, just an absolute idiot.
Oh dear. That sounds like a lot of fun though.
Yeah, it's a really great comic.
Fantastic. And talking about fun, the next question on the agenda around the campfire is what's the funniest or the comic that made you laugh out loud the most?
People who know me, this is going to be an easy one, is Viz. I read that all the time, and it's just
brilliant.
It's been banned I have to buy my own Viz at Christmas, my own Viz Christmas annual. My wife won't buy it for me. That's a sad state of affairs.
Oh dear. And
there's a running joke. Whenever I get good feedback on the Vanguard site, I always tell my wife it, but I say it's by B. Dutcher,
nice.
Who's the #1 fan. So I write
Fantastic.
to Dan, Happy Christmas from B. Dutcher, and then I put on a big show of opening it on Christmas morning, not pretending to know what it is, where it's from, which I imagine irritates her greatly, but that appears to be like one of my things in life is to irritate my wife, as all good husbands do.
That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah. We're letting the secret out.
Oh no, yeah. Keep this under wraps. Anybody listening, keep that under wraps, all right?
Winding the wife up. Yeah, but there's just the humour in that it really kills me. There's the letters column which really makes me laugh, and I often sort of like take pictures and we can send them to each other on the WhatsApp group, me, Tony, and Vince, and
great.
I've got into tradition now trying to buy them each Christmas as well.
Oh, great.
So bring the readership up a little bit.
Oh, too right, too right. And are there any specific stories from Viz over the years that kind of stand out for you?
Oh, God. It's weird because there was, when it first became popular, a load of other comics jumped up in the same sort of style of it, like adult comics, but they were quite crude. What a lot of people, or what they missed, was Viz is actually quite topical. So it would tackle kind of issues of the day, like Roger Melly, the kind of the obnoxious news presenter, would be talking about Brexit or something, but putting a spin on it. Whereas all the others would speak like crude humor. I'm trying to think one that sticks out to me though. There's oh God, I can't remember. There's one where like a UN negotiator tries to go to the bathroom next to the meeting, but the door is like made of slatted wood, and he's trying to go to the toilet quietly, and then all these kind of like stupid things are happening. Like he tries to open the window, and there's like a brass band playing outside, and you hear all this kind of tooting and roaring, and the delegates are inside the room trying to not notice.
trying to negotiate peace throughout the world.
So it's very slapstick, but yeah, it's
too right. It's the funniest form of comedy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So hopefully you get some laughs around the campfire.
I'm sure it would. Yeah, definitely. Like reminiscing about Viz.
They might all be eyeing each other, thinking if I'm going to be with the good guys or the the bad.
Exactly. And kind of part of this quiz is kind of working out whether or not people are good or bad.
Yeah,
I think, isn't it? And kind of what's their take on the stories as well.
I mean, because if I saw them sneering about like what do you like about comics, and they sneered, obviously there'd be a bad person.
Exactly.
And I would use my weapon of choice, which we'll talk about later.
Bingo.
To stave their head in.
You got to do what you got to do, mate.
You got to do. Yeah.
So the next question that comes up is what's the saddest or most upsetting comic?
There's a number, but there's one that always stays with me, and that's Berserk by Kentaro Miura. It's hard to talk about just how sad and bleak it is. It's really, really heavy. The themes throughout. It's one of those books you have to. There's many volumes of it, and when you first start reading it, you think of it as just another kind of lone swordsman going around fighting bad guys. But as you get into it, you see that all the characters have some very deep psychological issues and damage done to them, and that plays out through the story of them constantly trying to overcome their literal and figurative demons, and it never going right for them. That's one of those comics that the author is always trying to do the worst thing for them. So
yeah,
if
really putting you in bad situations.
Yeah, if you see something good happen to them, it's like kind of the ascent of a roller coaster up to the top before it drops. So they're getting built up to get knocked down, and the main character goes through so much. It's hard to watch when you sort of have like close friends to him betraying him or selling him out, and it's a great read. I couldn't recommend it enough. I know there's I'm not doing a very good job of selling it on being good to read, but it's really, really sad, upsetting. There's some scenes that you can't really talk about because they're really not very PG. But yeah, it's good read, really good read.
Fantastic. And I know you're kind of saying there that it doesn't sound like you're selling it, but sometimes I like to read stories like that because stories like that, it helps us deal with that sort of stuff that's in the real world.
Yeah,
as well. And kind of, okay, so yeah, what would I actually do in that situation? And not that I'm ever going to be kind of a lone samurai that's kind of, up against it. But, you can, they're transferable kind of
when
themes,
the characters are working through kind of moral decisions and moral kind of choices, you can, as a writer as well, you can see like it's great to see them characters being built up, and when people make a choice that it's totally within their character, but it's totally wrong morally what they've done. So there's one character who essentially kind of has it all, and it all gets stripped away from him, and he gets a chance to get everything back and more, but all he has to do is sell out his friends, and he does it. And you never kind of really forgive that, but you can totally understand why you would do it, which makes such a great character.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Kind of to do something completely against your better judgment, but you do it because it's kind of, I guess, for the greater good. That's great storytelling right there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you can kind of work that into your characters of like, rather than being evil for being evil or good for being good, is if they got reasoning why they're doing. See, some people I've read where they criticize that element of having something in the character you can relate to, but surely you've got to have that. I mean, the bad guy's got to have a reason to be doing what he does, and it's got to be relatable. If he's just doing it just to be evil, that makes him like a 2D villain that's totally uninteresting and totally not believable.
Exactly. Like, but behind every evil act, there's something that's happened. In that person's past to do it, not to justify it in any way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
But it's just the reason that they.
Yeah. I mean, he's doing it. Like we said about mentioned before with Thanos, he's wiping out half the galaxies. He thinks that's the best thing to do, even though he's wearing a gauntlet that could provide so many other ways of dealing with a problem he thinks he faces. The way he deals with it is defined by the way he's been brought up and the way he's lived his life. And to him, it's totally justified and totally moral and totally reasonable to wipe out half the galaxy with a click of his fingers. But
yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
I feel like that sometimes too. You know.
Yeah. Usually when I'm commuting.
Yes,
it would be great with half the people
on the central line, right?
Yeah,
that's it. I'm clicking my fingers.
When you're being forced into some man's sweaty armpit, and you're like, "Oh God, what am I doing this for?"
No thanks. Gosh, yeah. I moved out of London a couple of years ago now, so I'm past
well
that.
Away from that.
And I mean, I do go into London sometimes, and that does happen. But yeah, I'm glad I'm out of that now. I'm afraid of me.
When I've gone for jobs in the past, I've always tried and work out if I have to go in the underground, and sometimes it's swayed my decision whether I've gone for something or not, because I don't want to go in the underground. There's one time I was worked near Green Park and near Oxford Street, and I walked through Green Park to get to Victoria. And in the winter, Green Park is just like black. There's no lights. Wow. And it's you're walking through this park. There's no one around. And so I could get mugged here. That's the least of my worries. Could get mugged. And even then, I was sort of like, I'm not taking the underground. I'm walking.
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to take that risk.
Yeah, taking that risk.
And talking about getting mugged and kind of generally being scared in the dark, the next question that pops up is the scariest or most horrifying comic?
Oh, there's been the Uzumaki book, which I've recently got. I knew about the artist for a long time, but I've only read a couple of these stories, one being the collected volumes called Spiral, or Spirals. And again, that's really horrific. It's hard to kind of, for me, I think comics can struggle to chill readers, but this one does it almost effortlessly. He does it so well that with one of the things with the tools in the box for horror films is the jump scare. I mean, that's an easy to go to, but you've got so many. You've got music. You can show information to the viewer for a moment, whereas on the comic page, if you draw a panel, they can spend 5 seconds to 50 minutes looking at it and dissecting it. So having that kind of just a little flicker of something in your brain's trying to work out what it was, you don't have that tool in comics. So you've got to be a lot more kind of you got to understand what you're doing a lot more, and he certainly does. Rather than go for kind of quick shocks, there's a building of dread and a general creepiness to everything. That it starts in this fishing village where they start seeing spirals and everything, and it seems like spirals have their own kind of will, and eventually it kind of brings this whole town into kind of madness and death, where everyone starts succumbing to this. And yeah, that's one apocalypse I want to be caught into.
Wow.
It does seem to be. So the kind of, they have to start building their houses in like a spiral formation towards the center of the village where this kind of thing's happening. It's monstrous, yeah, but really good book, really good read.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah. I'd
I have to
recommend
check
that.
this out.
Yeah,
Definitely. Spiral.
I think it's Spiral. Let me do a quick Google.
Go for it.
Uzumaki Spiral. So that is Uzumaki, Uzumaki, and it's just called Spiral.
Brilliant.
I'm not going to try and say the kanji because I can't.
No, we'll leave it at that. But people check out Spiral. That sounds horrifying.
Yeah, it's generally horrifying.
Absolutely. And maybe onto a bit of a lighter note. What's the most meaningful comic to you?
It's taking it back. It's going back to the Action Force and the G.I. Joe comics when I was a kid, because back then, we can see now, essentially they were just kind of glorified toy commercials, but the comics always kind of had a bit of, I don't know, always connected with them, really enjoyed them, and all these kind of the colourful characters. And then I'd get the figures, and I could kind of, maybe that's where my storytelling came from, is like getting the figures and the vehicles and making up your own stories. One of the things with, I don't know if you've got this, but with my own son, like the figures are not really such a big thing anymore. It's more kind of looking at games, or he does play Lego, but the storytelling with action figures and whatever, that it's not so much of a thing anymore. But I guess because when we was young, we had to use our imagination because the games weren't really up to much.
No, you had to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Really.
But you never know. I mean, like, seeing so much kind of great stuff on screens and what other people are doing and being a bit more interconnected, they might come up with even better stories. So it's too early to tell. But I tried to track down all the kind of the old Action Force comics and ended up having to get a bootleg CD off of eBay to read them.
Oh, really? Wow.
Because otherwise there's no collections. You have to buy them, go on eBay and buy them all. And I've kind of, this year, definitely, I've moved away from buying single issues and trying to get trades. I do make an exception for small press, because you got to buy the the single issues, otherwise there won't be a trade.
You can, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. You know? You think that's kind of the genesis of your storytelling and kind of what
could well be
the storytelling that you are today.
Yeah, I think kind of
Definitely.
the colourful heroes with sort of like in vague military kind of garb and vehicles, that certainly plays out through Vanguard,
I'd say.
Yes. So yeah, I think you can probably trace the roots back to there. There's definitely a thing in there.
Oh, definitely. Fantastic. Because, I mean, I have a bit of a similar thing, but I had, do you remember Brave Star?
Yeah, was it 30-30 or 40-40?
30-30 was
30-30.
Was the horse, his deputy with the shotgun. It was a robot horse that he rode, but then kind of when they went into battle, then, it'd stand up, transform and have like a massive shotgun as well. It was so good. And it's in New Texas. It wasn't just New Texas, it was New Texas. It's so good.
What was the name of the bad guy in that?
I really can't remember, but I remember he was kind of like Skeletor if he had kind of like a handlebar moustache.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. I can't remember too much about this. I can remember there was like the daughter of the local miner or something. It was kind of like a gingerhead lass. I can't remember her name. But,
I can't remember the names either. But it was a great setting, and I thought it was kind of, underrated. In fact,
I mean, I see a lot of kind of small press stuff, more from the US, that tries to kind of capture that feel, and they always want to gun after like having a title sequence like one of those cartoons with all the graphics and the soundtrack. And I've seen a couple of do it, and it's interesting to see. But I always wonder, people trying to recapture their childhoods.
Oh, definitely.
I'd definitely be accused of that. So
definitely, but you can't beat the X-Men theme.
No,
tune.
You're right.
It's impossible. It is the best kids theme tune, cartoon theme tune ever.
There's a fantastic video on YouTube where a couple of musicians break it down and say why it's so good. And
really?
The amount of work and beats per second in it is like, whoa, I don't know anything about music apart from listening to it on my a phone. But so when someone kind of breaks it down, I was like, oh, I didn't even know about that. And it's fascinating to sort of see into a world like that.
Isn't it? And kind of the foundations that you don't know about.
Exactly, yeah. When people say, "Oh, can just bang out a tune on the computer," it's completely alien. Fortunately, I sit next to a bloke or behind a guy who he plays in a band and he's got a synth, and me and him are talking about doing something together.
Wicked.
So yeah, it won't be me playing the music, but he'll be doing that hopefully.
Getting on that. That sounds cool. I look forward to that. That's ace. And so the next question pops up around the campfire, which is the most underrated comic. Now, can you bring one to mind?
I would say generally there's a heck of a lot of titles in the small press world that are generally kind of, I feel like they need so much more exposure. I mean, that's one of the things we do on the Awesome podcast, is try and kind of shine a light on these people like you and I who kind of work away punching out these comics. And it's sort of all blood and sweat and tears trying to get these things made and into press. And walking around cons and coming across a title or a creator I've been previously unaware of, it's just absolutely great. I love it. It's such a great feeling, pick up someone else's kind of hard work, and it hasn't come from like a corporation, and it's not ticking boxes. It's literally from the creator to you, and it feels like a very pure vision, and I love it. I think it's great. I mean, there's many titles I could say, like Porcelain. It's fantastic. Follow Me In by from Avery Hill. Yeah, God, there's a slew. Yeah.
I mean, just this past year, there's an epic amount of Indian small press titles that came out that were fantastic, and probably the best place to go check out all those is Pipe Dream Comics' top 100 from this year.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah.
It's probably like all of the titles on there are probably underrated. I mean, admittedly, Milford Green, my title is at number 95, so I made it in the top 100. So
You're
I'm
in
selling
there.
myself there, but like, shamelessly. But yeah, I recommend everybody go check out the Pipe Dream Comics top 100 for last year. They're fantastic, which includes the Awesome Comics.
It does, yeah. I think we tabled there somewhere. I couldn't tell you where.
I think maybe 30s or something.
Oh, that's all right.
Maybe more.
Oh, nice one. We also recommend, like, a lot of small press titles are putting their comics on the Comic House app, which is great. I mean, I've come across stuff on there which I've meant to pick up, and then just seeing it on there and reading it on the app is great. And that's only a few quid a month, and there's such a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah, especially for the price of one issue a month, you get
exactly.
So much.
And there's so much UK stuff on there, and hopefully when more US people start seeing how well it's getting on, because I've put all the Vanguard on there, and I've got more money from that than I have from Comixology, which just seems to be an absolute uphill battle trying to get money.
Totally. I mean, you've really got to be a mainstream publisher to kind of make that worth your while, I think. You're
kind of literally battling up against the big guys, like, because you got not only DC, Valiant, everyone's on there. So but for me personally,
it's all there for the taking. And
just try and get your comic out to as many people as possible, and then under as many eyes as possible, and I don't think you can go far wrong.
Too right, mate. Too right. And so this leads on to like the final few questions, and this one is for you. What's the best comic of all time?
The best comic of all time. Oh,
yeah, I know it's quite an undertaking. But
I always go back to this comic and pick it up, and it's because I really enjoy reading about the character, and it's Punisher, Born by Garth Ennis and Daryl. The artist on The Boys. I can never remember his bloody name, but it's a fantastic series of kind of before Frank Castle becomes the Punisher, and you see like almost the remaining bits of his humanity bleed out, and it's such a great story. Watching, it's more of a story about the people around Frank. He's in this unit, and it's the end of the Vietnam War, and he has to kind of get this fire base kind of up to scratch, and it all goes really badly wrong. And from that kind of bloodbath, the Punisher's born out of it, and it's interesting seeing. It's a real good character piece of. You see these little elements of the man he's going to become being sown in within the story, and I always go back to it and read it at least like a couple of times a month.
Really? Wow.
Yes,
Brilliant.
Really interesting one.
Amazing. And so, if you could only take one comic into this apocalypse from this list, which would it be? I think I was trying to think of a comic which would remind me of happier times and how like the world would have been when I was back knocking about doing whatever. Like in the Stephen King world, in The Stand, it's not too bad. I mean, the shops would be full. The people who die would kind of like waste away. Yeah. I say that like it's a great thing, but yeah, exactly.
I put this up against like other apocalyptic kind of scenarios. I think this is kind of like an optimum one. But yeah, I would pick as a recent book. It's called Follow Me, and by Catriona Chapman, and it's just such a lovely book, like a travelogue of her and her boyfriend going around Mexico as tourists, and a kind of personal story unfolding between the couple. And it would be like if the life in the apocalypse was a bit of a misery, you could like take joy in reading that book and seeing all these wonderful sights that perhaps you'd never ever get the chance to see again if there was no more airplanes and means of transport or getting there. And that's what kind of I'd probably go for something like that. So
something light, positive,
exactly, yeah,
and good art.
I'm sort of running around trying to catch a rat for my dinner, covered in rags, oils. That would
sounds lovely.
That's just my normal Saturday night. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's average.
Yes.
Test me.
So yeah, that's what I'll go for.
Fantastic. Follow Me In, and that's from Avery Hill.
Yes, right. That's absolutely. I think it's about 15-20 quid, and you get an absolutely fabulous book. I'll use the L word, luscious. Nice. And it's jam packed with illustrations that Kat did back in the day, like a tourist guide to things they see in their journey through Mexico. I can't do it justice. You really have to pick that one up
and check it out. Brilliant. Go down your local comic shop and check it out. Definitely fantastic. And so this brings us back to our apocalypse, and like what we were talking about at the beginning. What weapon, tool, or useful item would you like to take into the apocalypse?
We're relatively well prepared in our house. I say relatively. We've got like an emergency bag for like if an event happened. Like we bought it, and it's got like yeah, exactly. It's like water purification stuff in it. It's got some MREs, like the military kind of quick meals. And it's because I'd sort out the under the stair cupboard after Christmas, and I came across it there, and it's like a big red rucksack full of stuff.
Brilliant.
And that's ready to go. And one of the things I'm going to be getting soon is, I don't know, I might never need it, but just in case I do, it's a 48-inch heavy-duty gorilla wrecking bar. And don't muck about with that.
Is it? Well, you're not going to take somebody on that's got that in their hand.
Also, it kind of doubles up. If I want to get into someplace, it's...
Exactly. It actually makes sense.
Yeah.
That does.
So it's a tool and a weapon. And if I get injured, I can use that to sort of hobble along on or something. I don't know.
Yeah, as well. It's kind of like got a variety of uses. That's why don't they use more kind of crowbars?
Yeah, God knows. I mean,
in apocalypse shows.
Yeah.
In comics.
They should be prepared and get one beforehand, like I am.
Too right. Be well.
I mean, you can pick a gun, because if we were stuck in England, there's no guns around and no ammunition. I don't know how to fire a gun apart from a bloody shotgun and clay pigeon shooting. And what else can you do with a gun? It's a gun.
Exactly. And, you can't take out nails. You can't. Take out floorboards.
Exactly.
Perfect. Awesome.
G me my way into someone's home where the occupants are screaming And I'm saying, give me your food. Got a bit dark there.
And,
That's a Sunday. It's a Sunday.
Yeah, there you go. And I trust that you're not going to be taking this crowbar to true believers.
No, I won't. I won't be there. I've got a couple of surprises planned, but that's all very hush hush.
Oh, exciting!
You have to turn up on the day for that.
Fantastic. And for true believers, it's oktruebelievers.com. If people want to go, it's a comic festival in Cheltenham. I'll be there. Dan, you'll be there as well.
I will be,
as well as the rest of the Awesome Comics team.
Yep.
Which is fantastic, as well as Sarah Millman from last week's episode.
Excellent.
So, it's all going on. And speaking of which, have you got anything that you can talk about that's coming up in the future?
What have I got coming up in the future? I'm trying to make the move to digital. So I've been saving up my pennies trying to get an iPad Pro, and I've done so much research into it. I can't wait to kind of get my hands on it and give it a go. So that's my plan for the next couple of months, is to move over to digital.
Right.
How that'll work, I don't know. So watch this space. Yeah,
that sounds fun. So you'll be doing all your art on the iPad Pro.
Well, hopefully, like I'll do the drawing stuff on it, and then the colouring and what have you on the big computer. That said, I might be able to. I don't know, or I have to see what it holds.
Research into it. Oh, that'll be exciting to see what you come up with from that.
Hopefully, it's a wise investment. Otherwise,
yeah, I hope so. I'll make sure you do your research beforehand.
Yeah.
Before taking the plunge, but it sounds exciting either way. Fantastic. Well, and thank you so much for sharing what comics you wanted to take into the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And just one last time, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Vanguard Comic, and you can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com. That's the outro I use every week on the Awesome Pod, so I'm pretty good at saying that one.
I love it. Yeah, exactly. That's well rehearsed. Fantastic. And for the Awesome Comics podcast, people can just basically Google Awesome Comics podcast and they'll be able to find it, right?
Yeah, in our secret little WhatsApp group, we've been talking about the guests we got on. We got some quite big names coming on. So it's kind of difficult because we swing from like where you can be quite friendly with small creators, and then you get these bigger names and you've got to kind of change tact a little. But it's going to be fun and interesting. Yeah.
I like that though. I think kind of the fact that you have such kind of a broad variety of guests, from kind of small press and indie to larger names, I think that's really great.
Yeah, it's interesting trying to get like a little kernel of wisdom off of everyone, and it's certainly helped me in my sort of creative process over the years. Definitely.
And hopefully Comics for the Apocalypse will be a bit of a resource and a bit of an insight into creators' minds as well. So
yeah,
I hope to contribute to that.
Yeah, what people read and what they recommend, you can't go wrong. Yeah, exactly. Good stuff. Thanks for having me on. Perfect. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure, Dan, and take care, and I look forward to seeing you at True Believers.
Yeah, I'll see you then.
Awesome. Perfect. See you, mate.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks again to Dan for being on Comics for the Apocalypse. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review for us on iTunes or whichever podcast service you use, as not only will it let me know that you liked it, but I believe it helps make other people aware of the show as well. If you'd like to check out Dan's work or follow him on social media, those links are in the show notes, along with all of the show's social links as well. And finally, as long as the apocalypse doesn't come to pass in the next week, I'll see you next Monday. Bye for now.